to Art by Lori Lester. Today we're going to be doing a lesson on using lines and shapes again. It's called lineation. And today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a more complicated project. But again, this is pretty doable for any age, probably 6 and up, if you break it down into very simple steps. Today we're going to be doing a watercolor and ink piece on this beautiful picture of this leopard. This is a Mangelson. We love Mangelsons. We're big fans. He's a pretty well-respected outdoor animal and wildlife photographer. We have quite a few of his pieces in our home. But this is taken from his calendar, and because I don't have any wildlife pictures like this of my own, I'm going to go ahead and use his as the base. Now, talking about lineation, lines and shapes, doing art pieces, what you need to do is you need to start off with any picture from nature. And today I thought doing an animal would be kind of fun because we haven't done that yet. So if you took a look at this picture of this leopard, I can see by practice several lines and shapes, okay? Now, what do you mean by looking at lines and shapes? I'm going to put this down for just a minute. Here's some things that you might recognize. Here's a great example of using lineation, shapes, and lines to create characters. Now, you all know this. This is Feline, the character Feline from Walt Disney's Bambi. Now, as you can see here, the artist that did Feline, there's usually one artist that's assigned to a character, you can see has used shapes and lines to create the basis for his character. And then what they do is they draw in other lines and details to fill in the picture for your brain. But really, all that you're doing is basing your character on lines and shapes. You can see here. Now, obviously, the Walt Disney Company has a lot more money to bring in live animals and so forth for their animated features. Even the CGI ones are based with lineation. But if you have a lower budget, like somebody like me or a smaller company, pictures will do just fine to base your lineation and your base picture off of. Here's another one. By the way, these are all copyrighted pictures from the Walt Disney Company, so I will not be reproducing them. But here's somebody you recognize. And again, here you see the lines and shapes. Okay, you see lots of circles, ovals, squares, lines that make these characters. Okay, so let's take a look at how we apply this and do this with pictures of our own. By the way, this technique was started by some of the original animators from the Disney studios, like the old timers, Ward Kimball, Ollie Johnston, Mark Davis, the amazing, talented animators. And artists today, whether they're working for magazines, doing storyboards for movies or whatever, they still use these great storyboard concepts, which is kind of fun and kind of neat to do. So here's what I did. If you look at this picture of this leopard, face, here we go. It's a nice circle. And I started off, here it is. Here's the circle for the face. Do you see it? Okay. Then the eyes are more of an oval shape. So what I did was I started, here's an oval shape with the eyes. Okay. Here, under the fur, I see 2 cheek circles. Do you see that? 2 cheek circles. Okay. The nose looks like a triangle to me. So I did a triangle here. The muzzle is yet another circle, and it goes into the chin. You see that? And then the chin itself is also another circle. And I have this as well. Now, if you look at the body, she's laying in the grass. Here's a large oval here, which I've drawn here. Here's another circle that is attaching her arm to her trunk, okay, that I see. And then here's her other arm that's kind of hiding more in the grass, but I see another circle there as well. And then what happens is I get something that looks like this. Now, when you get to this point, oh, and of course you have her ears, I see 2 ovals, 1, 2 on the top, and then I see 2 smaller ovals at the bottom. Do you see that? And I've added them here. Once you get to this point, it looks kind of funny, doesn't it? Doesn't really look like the picture that we have, but it's a good base. Now, once you get to this point, you can take your drawing or your art piece a couple of different avenues. You can make it more of a cartoonish character, by filling in the details on how you want, which is something that the Disney Corporation does very well. And so can you, actually. Or you can make it more realistic, which is more my kind of flavor that I want to do with this piece. Okay. Now, because this is a rather long project, there will be some time lapse in this video, just to kind of speed things up. Okay, because I'm going to take it to the very end, and that's a lot more than 9 to 12 minutes on this video. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead from this point. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start adding in, using the picture that I see, start adding in some of the details. Okay, I'm going to be connecting these shapes and lines to what I see on the face. Now, my final piece is going to look a lot different than what we have here, but this is a very good starting line, and anybody can do this that can draw any kind of shapes. Okay, so the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start erasing some of these lines. And as I go ahead and fill in the details, I'm just drawing lines to see where I see the face. Okay, I'm not going to worry about the marks on the fur yet. That's going to come a lot later. How about the nose? The nose has a kind of heart shape on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tweak my triangle. I'm going to tweak it so it looks like that. So what you're going to do is go through your picture and you're going to go ahead and look at the little details and slightly shift your shapes into those details. Don't be afraid to erase. Don't be afraid to leave some of those lines there if they help you. Leave it, because as you add more details to your picture, those are going to change and they're going to look more either cartoonish, if that's the way that you want your piece to be, or more realistic. For example, I don't need this line on top now. Okay, and I don't need this line here. I drew this line right here to make sure that my eyes are what's called parallel or balanced. Because when you're looking at a picture of an animal, the thing that stands out most is their eyes. So you want to make sure to get the eyes as close as possible to the way it is in the picture. And some artists say the eyes really make the picture, and I agree with that. Some artists, they'll start with the eyes first before they do anything else at this point. And if the eyes aren't looking right, they'll start over until the eyes do look right. So the great thing about doing art that I love is, you know, you can't do it wrong. You have to do what makes you happy and what looks good to you. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do some more details. I'm going to stop, and you'll catch up with me a little bit later, because this is a fairly long project, and try it with your piece and with your picture. Okay? All right. Okay, I'm coming along. Here we are, and my concern mostly right now is for the eyes. How are the eyes looking? They're looking pretty good right now, actually. They're spaced well. They look realistic. So I'm going to continue going. If the eyes weren't quite right, or if I wasn't happy with them, then I would start my project over again. Start with my circles, squares, triangles, shapes, and my lines, and do it over again. That part doesn't take very long at all. Okay, so I'm going to continue going. I'm shading now over some of the original circles and lines that I traced to begin with, and that's going to go ahead and that's going to give my outline for when I apply my watercolors and when I start doing my lining and adding the design, the pattern of her fur on here. I'm going to leave that for the watercolors in for the ink, just so they pop out a little bit more. I like that style better, but you kind of have to figure out what works for you. So I'm going to continue going with this, and then we're going to start applying the watercolor. Okay? All right. I'm sure you're doing a good job. Remember to start off with your shapes, and then make sure to spend special close attention to your eyes. Okay? Okay, now we're getting closer to the point where we can start doing the watercolors. What I'm doing now is I'm taking the side of my pencil, sideways like this, hold my pencil sideways like this, and I'm shading important areas or covering over important areas that were once my circles or shapes. I'm doing that just slightly because that's going to help me guide the colors for my watercolor. And again, if it looks too hokey or if there's something that you don't like about it, you can always erase it. You can always go back and erase it. But those guides will be very helpful for us to do our watercolors. So, again, we're very, very close to being done with this portion. And then, like I said before, we're going to go back and add our details with our ink after the watercolor dries. So I want to make sure that I give myself a good pattern here. And again, all I'm doing really is just going over the circles and shapes that I had before to help me with my painting. So we're almost ready to start painting. What I'm doing with this particular piece, and what I usually do with pieces like this, is I always start out with the object that is the most interesting in the picture. So if you look at my sketch, my drawing, of course I'm drawing the leopard first, and then I'll go in and fill in the background after. Now, this can take a couple of days or quite a few hours, because as we go ahead and paint and we let the watercolor dry, then we go ahead and we do the background. One thing that I do as an artist is I make sure to paint first the focal point, or what's important in my piece first, and then the background comes after, and that's usually after the important part is dried. So again, this is usually quite a few hour project, but it's layered like that or done in steps like that, because we don't want the watercolors to bleed into each other. Now, some artists like that look. They like it to bleed into each other. They like their focal point or what's important in their picture or their piece to blend in with the background. But for this particular project, I'm not really interested in doing that. I want my leopard to really stand out, and the background's going to be the background. Okay, some artists will apply the background later and not do as much detail in the background. I haven't decided what I'm going to do about that yet, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to start painting our focal point now. Okay, now we're ready to go. When I'm doing watercolors, I always want to go light to dark to begin with. So I'm going to go ahead and do some of the areas that appear to be white first. Okay. Get the chin there. Okay. Oh, and of course we're going to leave it kind of light on the paper too, because we want it to look as much as the picture as possible. And if it strays a little bit from the picture, that's fine too. This is your piece now. Okay, all right. And then, of course, once again, we go from light to dark. Sometimes, when you're doing the layering, or when you paint and let it dry and then come back to it, you can do light to dark on the dry pieces, and it'll turn out very, very nicely. Give you good highlighting effects. And again, it's up to you. This is your piece now. Once you start tracing it and drawing it, it becomes your own, because it will come close to looking like the original, but it won't be exact. So once that happens, it's all yours. So I'm going to continue with this. And we'll follow this carefully. If it isn't exact, that's okay, because now it's becoming your piece. Okay. Now, we're going to do another time lapse in just a little bit, because this has got to dry. before we can start doing any of the inks or the backgrounds. Okay, so we'll fill that in. Okay, this is a good base. Notice I'm not getting too ticky-tack about having the colors go into the nose or go into the eyes because I'll be coloring those in, and it is a watercolor piece, so there is some blending that's going to happen, and that's okay. Okay, this is looking pretty good. I'm going to do some spots on here, but not too many because again I'm going to come back with my ink and I'm going to do more details with the patterns on her fur when we come back and it's dry. Notice the eyes. I'm going to leave those dry for right now because the eyes are going to be part of the last portion of the piece that I'm going to do because I really want them to pop and really want them to make a statement. So I'll go ahead and set a mild background to it. I love that her eyes in this picture almost look a grayish blue, which for leopards is very unusual. Normally they have golden eyes. So I'm going to set a tone of a gray and a blue. And I'm going to make her eyes probably even a little bit more of a blue tone. But I'm going to do it step by step, not too much. Okay. Alright, and then, let's see. I love doing wildlife. It's so beautiful. And even though I'm either sitting downstairs in my studio or up here in the kitchen where the sun comes in nicely, kind of makes me feel like I'm somewhere far away and exotic, which is kind of fun when you can't hop on a plane and be somewhere exotic, even if you want to at that very moment. Okay, it's coming along. I'm going to continue. We need to let this dry, and then we'll come in and do some more. Okay, everything's coming along nicely. I left for a while and let the watercolors dry. If you take a look, you'll see shadings where the original shapes were, some of the outlines of the original shapes. And the darker shadings are what's coming off of what looks like darker on the animal as well. So that is my guide. And again, I just use darker areas to cover some of the circles and shapes. And go over some of the lines that I had in my original lineation drawing. Now, because the first layer of watercolors is dry, what I'm doing now is I'm going through and I'm adding all the spots for the leopard, because the cat wouldn't be a leopard without its spots, right? So, and again, I want to make it as close to nature as possible using the photograph or my model and trying to make it as close as possible. But again, if it's not exact, it doesn't need to be perfect, and I'm okay with that because it's all about having fun, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go in and draw more spots, just little outlines, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through with my watercolors again, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some more watercolor to this area and fill them in. And then after that, we'll go ahead and let this dry. Then we'll start working on the background. And then after the background layer, we'll go ahead and add the ink. Okay? All right. So, see you in a bit. Okay, so now we've got pretty much the majority of the spots that I want to go ahead and trace in. The rest I'll be doing with the watercolors and later on with the ink. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start coloring in the spots. And if you look at the original picture, the spots on the head typically are pretty much black. And then as you go down the body, if you look carefully, you'll see that the spots become a brown center and kind of like a clover leaf or a little flower pattern. Do you see that? So I could do circles of 3 or 4 if I were to go ahead and sketch it out. Or I can also remember that as I'm painting and do little circles of 3 and 4 as well. And then as we go back after, when that layer is dry with the watercolor and do the pen and ink, we can go ahead and make more details with that. So here we go. We'll start off with the head and we'll do the dark areas there. Again, this is kind of time consuming. The leopard isn't the easiest animal to draw because he does, or she does, have so much detail, which is going to be kind of fun at the end. A lot of people think, oh my goodness, I'm not going to do that because that's so much work. Yeah, it is a lot of work, but you can break it down, you know, for each step as it dries. You can break it down into several days or hours. And then when you get sick of it or tired of it, you can just put it down and walk away for a while. And it'll still be there when you're ready to come back. And then at the end, after you've done all of these different details, then you've got something to really look back on and think, wow, that looks really good. And again, remember, you're doing art for yourself. You're making it for yourself, to be happy for yourself. And then if other people like it as well, that's just frosting on the cake. So I'm going to continue on. This is going to take quite a while. So again, we're going to kind of do, I'm going to pause and continue doing this, and then you'll come back to me a little bit later after I completed most of our spots. Okay, the next layer in my project is looking pretty good. I just watercolored the spots, and now what we're going to do is we're going to let this dry for a little bit, and then the next layer that we're going to go ahead and add is the background. And what we'll do is we'll watercolor the background, and then after that we'll let that dry, and then we'll come back with the pen and ink to do the final details. But it's coming along well, and I hope if you're trying something like this, you'll stick with it. It just takes patience. And remember, in art, the great thing about it is there's no right or wrong. It's all good. Alright, now this layer is dry, the layer with the spots for the watercolor. Now what we're going to do is, our focal point, or the most important part of our piece, is all set for inking. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and do the watercolor for the background. And if you look at this original picture, she's sitting in front of some rocks. And she's definitely in the grasslands. So, and if you look, the grass hasn't dried out yet. It's still green. So we're going to go ahead and use nature as our guide. We're going to use those colors. And we're going to go ahead and do the background. So we'll start off with the rocks. Okay. Some different colors in there as well. That doesn't look like much right now, but it will once we start adding in our details. Okay. And if you look at the highlights of the rocks, you're going to see kind of different colors. I see some pinks and some purples. A little bit of yellow might make it pop a little bit. And so then, of course, we'll go back and we'll add details with our pen and ink a little bit later. Okay, and this rock just goes slightly beyond her face. You probably can't see it. Whoops, I'm losing light. Okay, we'll come back and we'll add more to that a little bit later. Now let's go ahead and we're going to add some greens and some yellows to the grass. Okay, great. Okay, we'll just do a nice base for right now. And we'll go back. And after this layer dries, we'll go back and apply light to dark again, so we can see some details using the watercolors as well. Let's stick it up. Okay. So this is a good base, and if you notice on the original picture as well, she's totally submitted in the grasslands, and if you look at the top, there's also grass area above her, so there is no sky. You will not see any horizon. So we're going to go ahead and copy that as well. Make that area green-ish. And again, we're going to let this layer dry, and then we'll come back and we'll add some more details. She's just smack dab in that grassland, isn't she? place to be. Okay, and we want to stay away. Normally I would do the dark and the light in different layers and let them dry because we don't want them to smear. Like I mentioned before, some artists like that, and that's fine. And if you like that, go for it. I'm going to kind of keep them separate for this piece. Okay, so there's a good base for us, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to let that dry for a little bit, and then we'll add more highlights in just a little while after this next layer of watercolors dry. Okay, now we have the other layer of watercoloring drying, and now what I'm starting to do is, again, working light to dark. I'm adding more watercolor in, and I'm going to go ahead and do some highlights of some areas. I want to go ahead and do some grass. And I want it to stick out and give the painting some dimension. So again, and I'm working light to dark. I also added some more highlighted yellow on the rock area. So you can see the sun a little bit more shining off that rock. Give it some dimension. So I'll go ahead and I'll add some more details, going light to dark in this layer, then we'll let it dry, and then I think we're just about ready to start doing our inking, but we have to make sure that our watercolor is completely dry first because we don't want it running into each other and making a mess. Keep sticking with it, and if you like your piece the way that it is now, you can actually stop. Well, you can actually stop anytime throughout the process, but I'm not quite ready to stop yet, so I'm going to keep going, okay? All right. Okay, now all of our watercolor layers are dry, and we're ready to start inking. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use permanent marker. We always want to use permanent marker because we want to make sure that the color doesn't bleed or fade. And I like to get started on the focal point of the picture. So we're going to go ahead and get started on the cheetah. Now this can take a very, very long time because what I want to do is I want to trace around all of my watercolor components or pieces, and I want them to really pop out. That's part of the purpose of inking things or using a pen after you watercolor, is it really makes details really pop out. So this is going to take me quite a long time if I do it right. Now remember, stick with it, and if you get tired or if you feel like, oh, this is too much, take a break, put it down, come back to it. I'm going to power out so that way you can kind of see what how this is going to end. So again, we're going to do some time lapse. I'm going to stop my camera and I'm going to continue working, and then we're going to jump towards the end of the project, okay, because otherwise you'll be sitting here with me for quite a long time. Alright, so here we go, and I'm going to keep working and I'll be back shortly. Well, not really, but soon. Okay, so here's our original picture that we've been working from, and here's what I have so far. She's really coming along nicely. I'm very excited about the way that she's looking, and I'm using many different types of widths for my pens. I have thicknesses, various thicknesses, and for the fine fuzz on her fur, I'm going to be using the thinner ones. So I'm going to continue on. And we'll continue going. Here we go. Again, really the focal point of this piece, I think, is her eyes. She's so beautiful and so majestic. The nose and the face are also very important. So I want to stick clear to what's in the photograph as much as I can. And again, there's no right or wrong. It's really great about art. If it's not exact, that's fine. It's going to be my own project, my own picture. And I'm doing this because it makes me happy. So it doesn't need to be exact. Okay. I've been working a lot on this And so, you know, the more that you work on it, the more details are going to appear on here, the more it's going to really fill out and look polished and finished. This can continue on for a long, long time, for several days. It could continue on until you're satisfied with it. I think I'm pretty much done. I can continue on adding some more details. See some things that I missed. I love her chin fuzz. It's really fun. Let's see. It's looking pretty good. And again, you want to have all kinds of different widths for pens. At this point, when it's completely dry, you've done the inking, if you see some spots that need some shading, I like to go back and use the original pencils. I'm looking at the eye area. This could probably be a little bit darker, don't you think? So I'm going to go back and I'm going to shade in using the side of my pencil. I'm going to shade in some shadow. And that's okay to do, especially around the eyes, eye area. Actually, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do some more shading in some other places as well. But she's pretty much good to go. So that kind of takes you through the many different layers and the whole process of starting from the lineation piece all the way through to the very end. Now again, this is very, very time consuming, but if you feel like you're overwhelmed, you need to take a break and come back to it, because of course the final project, once it's done and it has a lot of detail on it, you'll be very proud of, and it will be definitely something that you might want to frame or hold on to or keep in your sketchbook or be part of your portfolio if that's what you want to do. Thanks for tuning in today, and remember to have fun with your art.